Welcome back to the Optimize You podcast, the place where we're helping you optimize looking and feeling your best. If you enjoy the show, be sure to share it with a friend, like, and subscribe. And let's get into today's podcast. I think stress for dudes is a good one, though, man, because I know for me personally, I wasn't the best at dealing with this. I was, or even I would say even acknowledging it. I don't know if you're the same way, but I was just like, man, what, like people that say that they have anxiety or high levels of stress, and they were like a dude or a guy. I think especially coming from like an athletic background. I don't know if you feel like that too, but I had coaches that were just super old school, I think, and I think that just wore off on me to be like, bro, you better figure it out. I don't care if you're stressed out. And so you wouldn't vocalize that as something as like, oh man, I'm feeling really stressed out. I don't think I've ever said that, like especially in my younger ages. Now older, yes, I like have turned the chapter and kind of approached it in a different way. But growing up, man, like you would, I don't know if that's just a guy thing or what, but like I would never express that, I was, oh man, I'm super stressed. I don't know. Is that how
Oh,
you were
dude,
too?
yeah, I still struggle with it, honestly. Yeah, growing
Yeah.
up, I feel like, dude, you kind of like I've always modeled my dad, and it's like, yeah, he never showed a lot of emotion, right? And so it's like I always kind of just, I think, subconsciously have just been like, that's what dudes do, right? They don't show emotion, they don't show stress. Like even if they are stressed, then we're gonna throw it behind us and we're gonna act like we're not stressed, right? I still struggle with that, right? I'm trying to work through that, but I've realized, I mean, I think I was talking to you about this not too long ago, but yeah, so like the last month has really just kind of got on top of me. I was in training for like 3 or 4 straight months at work, and kind of started neglecting my health a little bit, just putting certain things on the back burner because I was so busy and I didn't have time, and I'm not sleeping as good, and then my nutrition's taking a hit. All these different things are going on, and then all of a sudden, like it all bubbles up and it becomes overwhelming. And so I think that's kind of for me, it was a wake up call. It's like, oh shit, like you gotta get your shit together, but also you got to stop neglecting the stress, like because when you neglect the stress and allow it to get to that point where it just boils up, then that's where shit hits the fan, right? Because it really goes back to, in my opinion, it's like the last month or two is going to contribute to what you're feeling today, right? So if you neglect things, you might not notice them right away. Like if you don't take advantage or take control of your stress or try to get under control, then all of a sudden a month down the road you feel the benefit, you feel the effects of it, right? Now it comes to the bubble, it boils up and it starts blowing up in your face a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's exactly how I have dealt with it my entire life too. I don't think I even resonate or acknowledge that I'm dealing with a certain level of stress until it gets so built up into where I remember there's been situations where I'm like, dude, I don't know what the answer is, but even if I were to run as far away as possible as I could from this, I couldn't outrun it. It's like maybe if I were to like physically right now, if I were just to leave my house and just book it or just drive as far as I could, these feelings wouldn't leave me. And it's like there's no escaping this. And for me, that was like a reality check where I was like, whoa, I better figure out how to deal with this because now it's built up so much to the point where I haven't told anybody, I don't vocalize it. I've always dealt with it in a way for us with health and fitness is like using that as an outlet, and I've used that as an outlet, and it's always been great. But I've realized there are certain points in my life where I wasn't able to do that, and I wasn't able to just like lift it away. Like yes, it does help. I would say 90% of the time, but there are rare scenarios where I faced where I was like, man, no matter how heavy I lift, no matter how fast I try to outrun this feeling, it's daunting and it's huge and it's on my shoulders and it feels like this heavy weight, and I need to get rid of this. And I would try to like physically use an outlet of, lifting or, exerting myself that way because that's all I knew and that's how I dealt with it in the past. And we were frowned upon if like you said, our older like father figures, it was like they never showed that. So I think we kind of just followed in suit and just were like, if we show it, we're weak. It shows that we can't handle stress. It shows that we're incapable. And so like all those thoughts are like subconsciously, in the back of my head where I'm like, man, I better figure out how to deal with this. And so as I've gotten older, I'm like, man, it's okay to like talk about it. I was like, damn, that was like the biggest, transition for me, was to like vocalize it and be like, it's okay, dude. It's not bad to feel that way. It's not bad to feel stressed and overwhelmed. And it's okay to admit that you're feeling that. And it's cool. Like, it's fine. That's actually how you get through it faster. That's how you get by it. And so that's what I've
Yeah.
experienced, man.
And that's awesome, man. And that's what like I've noticed too. I'm still not great at it. I still struggle. I still bottle things up, and I'm working to change that because I don't want that to be like how I go about it, but it is baby steps. It's like acknowledging it and like being comfortable talking about it. And I think like the podcast has actually helped me over time as well, because I did vocalize a lot of stuff on the podcast in the past that like I would have never said 5 years ago, right? Like I never would have said to the public or anybody. And just like things I was going for is almost like for a little bit there, it was like my own personal like diary was like the Thursday podcast episode. So I kind of went through some times there. And like on top of like, you said health and fitness as an outlet, a lot of people, and this is what I obviously struggle with, is like alcohol, right? Alcohol was an outlet, drugs, different thing, food, right? Like a lot of people, like stress, it bubbles up and you binge eat, or you eat a bunch of like garbage, you drink a lot, you maybe smoke, or you do other drugs like to mask it, right? You're just running away from the problem. And it just generally gets worse, right? Because what I found with that, especially like just drinking as an example, is that I would mask how I was feeling with drinking for a long period of time, just like kind of pushing those feelings away and pushing the stress away. And then like you wake up and you're sober, and then it comes back like even worse, right? It's just a little bit worse. And then that's why people end up doing it more and more and more a lot of times, I think, too, is because like it comes back and it keeps coming back and it's worse. And then it's like, I got to keep doing this more and more and more, because otherwise I'm going to feel this way. But really confronting those feelings and confronting the stress and using options, like just things that are a little bit more healthy for you, I found is a lot better. Just like prioritizing sleep, right? Like just breathing. Yoga has been a really beneficial thing for me. Like I like to do it at night, stretch at night, yoga, like yin yoga. And I find that that's like almost like a meditation, but also just like a decompression, helps me sleep a little bit better. And yeah, just like going on walks is huge for me when it comes to stress. Like when I feel overwhelmed, like going on walks in nature, like just without my phone, without headphones is a huge thing. And so like I think that's something for me that has helped me. Is, have you found any things like on your end that have really helped you manage the stress a lot better?
That's cool you said that, man, because I've noticed that too. When I take the headphones out, when I go experience my walks with no distractions and just be with your own thoughts. I'll even do it in my workout sometimes too, and just like no music and just be in there with your own thoughts. And it's like, dude, I found that's the easier and simpler way for me to cope with things, and it helps me work through things because you can't hide from it, right? Like there's no distraction. I'm curious to know, did you have like, for me, I kind of vividly have like a turning point where I was like, oh man, I can't just like I can't just physically outwork these thoughts or this stress or this weight that I'm carrying anymore. Like I have to do something different. I actually have to work on it and progress and dive in and peel back the layers of the onion and like, and go deeper on this and be able to come out on the other side of it. I can't just keep brushing this under the rug. Did you have any scenarios where you vividly remember where you're like, oh, this is going to take a little bit more than me just like going to work out or me just like masking this scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I like when I think of that, I think of like when I decided that I was going to get sober. Really, it was like kind of that big turning point for me, where it was like I just remember it kind of boiled up. The drinking had boiled up to a point where it was like, I'm getting like blackout drunk on like a Sunday night when I got work the next day, right? Waking up, not remembering, like, and I just like, I was like, this is not good. And I just felt so terrible. Yeah. I felt terrible about myself, right? Like I just like was in a deep just depression. And that was a huge thing where I was like, this is going to take a lot more than just a quick fix. But like, I was like, I'm done. I was done and sick of like how I was feeling, the anxiety, the stress, the emotions, like, and I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to to get out of this. And so that's kind of one thing that comes to mind. I'm sure there's been plenty of other times when I've been super stressed in my life, and it's boiled up and it's become a problem, and then I've had to like right the ship again and like really start putting things back together. I'm kind of in it right now, really, where I just come through where I think the stress of like a few months of training and like just working so hard and neglecting um, some of the things that have really got me into a great place with my health over time, got me to the point where I got sick, and I didn't, I felt terrible. I'm still coming through it, right? It's been like a week and a half. And I just realized like I got to do better, right? I got to be better with my nutrition. I got to be better with prioritizing getting into the gym. I got to be better with prioritizing getting quality sleep, and not being on my phone in the later hours of the night. All these things, it's so crazy. Like a lot of these things just creep up on you, right? You don't realize. It's like you start maybe moving away from the gym a little bit more. Not that I wasn't getting workouts in, but it's like not doing what I need to do, right? And it's like slowly moving away from the quality of food, slowly moving away from like the habits at night that contribute to a quality night's sleep. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh fuck, like I'm way far away from where I was, right? It's just these little small ticks over time that all of a sudden you're like, it's like a boat, right? I think we've talked about this analogy before. Like if you're not anchored, right? It's a little windy day. You might not even notice over the course of 30 minutes, all of a sudden you're 100 yards down the shoreline, right? It's like, it's crazy, but I think that's a really good analogy for this, where it's like you have these little small shifts that over the course of a month, it's like you're 100 yards down the shoreline and you're a completely different person with completely different habits. But the change is like noticing those things and then being able to get back on, and not like having to just like fully go 180, 360 and just go crazy, but just like what small shifts can I do now to like get back to where I was, right? To start pushing the boat back to our original position.
Well, I love that you brought that up, because that's the other side of it, right? That's flipping the script. That's going, okay, we talked about the things that you experience when stress is high, and the feelings that you feel, and the overwhelm that can potentially come over you and really affect you and affect your life. And it has for both of us. And we've used this podcast as an outlet for both of us in our individual scenarios to be like, man, this is what I'm going through. This is how I'm going to work through it. This is the thing that I look forward to each week, so that we can kind of go back and forth and share experiences and help each other, and help everybody else in the process too, who decides to listen. And so we've talked about that side of it. And you just briefly mentioned the other side of it is like, man, now once we've realized those things, there are different and numerous ways. I think it's about finding out like what works for you individually. I know that I've tried different stuff that works for people that doesn't necessarily work for me, but I found that what works for me too, and like may not necessarily work for other people. So that's why it's always good to like share it and use context. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of once you peak up and you notice that your ship is drifted because the current's taking you so far, and all those little habits compounded over a short amount of time, and before you knew it, you were just way out of your rhythm, or the stress was super stacked up against you. Just like it happened that quick, you can get right back into the swing of things too. And so that's why I like that you're bringing that up, is because I think people try to go from 0 to 100 so quick, and they're like, man, I'm feeling so much stress and overwhelm, and I need to go from this, and I need to experience happiness and bliss immediately and as fast as possible, because we're living in the Amazon Prime super quick delivery. We want everything now. And so we're treating our circumstances, our ability to deal with stress and manage stress exactly like that, versus going, well, I didn't necessarily get here overnight, but it did happen fairly quick. And I have the ability to make these slight minimal adjustments to pull myself out of here, assuming I'm at least somewhat diligent in the process and I have some sort of level of consistency. Just like I got myself in this rut, I can get myself out through consistency, through a little bit of discipline, through small minor shifts and adjustments. And before I know it, I can look back and go, man, I got myself out. I was able to do it. Maybe I had help from other people too, but I didn't put all this pressure on myself to make like this drastic change and immediately pull myself back from the spot I originally drifted from and get there like in 0.2 seconds. It's not going to happen like that. And I think the quicker we grasp, I know for me, the quicker I grasp that concept and go, okay, it's not going to be Amazon Prime, 1 to 2 day delivery. It's going to take a little bit. And the sooner I accept that, I know for me personally, I avoid trying to take shortcuts. I avoid trying to find like the easy way out. I avoid trying to, take the road that's most commonly visited by the majority of people that I see, that I'm like, oh, that must be working for them, or maybe I'll try that. And it's like, well, that may not necessarily work for me. So I have to experiment and try things and be okay with things not working. And I think that's the beauty of it, is we get to kind of dive into it ourselves and be like, well, let me try this. Let me go for a walk and not listen to music. You and me both, that works for us. Maybe that doesn't work for someone. Maybe they're so in their thoughts that they're driving themselves crazy, right? And so I think it's about finding that, like, what works for you. And that's why I love we're sharing these things, because fitness still works for me very, like 90% plus of the time, I would say. The going on walks and enjoying nature and taking the headphones out is another big one. I know mindfulness or any meditation, or even if I'm just listening to, like, I forget what it's called. It's like meditation music, or just like sounds. Like, it doesn't even have to be words. It's just like vibrations or sounds. That's been super helpful with me too, because for whatever reason, it allows my mind to get super like laser focused and razor sharp. And like, I can think 10 steps ahead, which is, I mean, I don't know why that works for me, but it does. And so, like, kind of harnessing those things that I know that work for me personally have been great to like pull me out of
Yeah.
those ruts.
No, those are all good. And I think those all work for me as well, or these are things I've tried. Journaling is another thing that is huge. I get away from it. I feel like it's something that I always go away from. It's like, but when I go back to it, and it's almost, this is like a reminder, like, Alex, you should probably journal more. Like, I haven't done it in a while, but I get into these grooves where I'm doing it for months on end, and like, you're just putting my thoughts on the page, and it's another way to just get them out there, right? Because sometimes when we put them on the page, I feel like it's a good place for us to be able to work through them a little bit more. Now they're out there, and now you can it's a little bit easier to work through them. It's just another way to express yourself too. But other things, like, I was listening to this book by John Deloney. It's like anxiety. Let me look what it's called, on Spotify. It was on Spotify Premium for anybody who has Spotify Premium. But it is called Building a Non-Anxious Life. And obviously, like, anxiety and stress kind of get lumped together a little bit. They're different, right? They're a lot different, and there's good forms of stress, right? There's bad forms of stress. There's, I think, anything that's too much of stress is going to not be beneficial for somebody, but anxiety is another thing that's generally thrown around with stress, right? And he talks about just different things, like choosing reality is like one of them, like choosing to like understand reality, choosing one of the good one, like choosing honesty, like something around like choosing honesty, I think can be really beneficial with stress. Like, being honest with yourself, right, is something that I think comes to mind. This conversation that we're having, just something that isn't easy for everybody, right? Isn't like being honest with yourself about, like, are you doing the right things? Like, are you half-assing? Are you like actually trying to fix it? Because I think a lot of times it's like we just talk about how stressed we are. Like, we think about how stressed we are. We ruminate on all these different things, but we really don't put in place anything to fix it. And it's not like it has to be anything crazy. Fix it, maybe the wrong word too. Manage, right? I think manage is probably a better word, because like, it's not like stress is always ever going to go away. Like, there's always going to be something there, right? Like, especially if you have like a certain type of job, or marriage, or all these different things, they generally come with maybe a little bit of stress, right? There's some sort of stress there. And so, like, are you honestly trying to work towards managing this stress? Are you honestly trying some of the things that Matt and myself have given you to help yourself, right? Like going on a walk. It doesn't have to be with or without music. Could be with, like what you said, like meditation music, or like calming music. Like, that could be a good way. Could be doing some meditation, just trying it, maybe just for a minute, right? Just sitting there and focusing on your breath. Could be getting a workout in. Could be going in the sauna. Could be doing an ice bath. Could be doing a cold shower. Could be just stretching, right? Doing some yoga. There's a lot of different things, journaling, like there's a lot of different things, but I think like at the root of it is like just having that honesty with yourself of putting in the effort. And like Matt said, knowing that it's not going to be like this overnight journey to getting to where you want to be with it or to getting into a better place with it, but that, you know, over the course of a month, even over the course of a few weeks, you're going to see a big change, I think. But if you continue with these small habits and these small, just even 5 minute things, less than 5 minute things that you can do throughout a day, then all of a sudden you wake up a month from now and you're like, oh shit, I'm a completely different person. I feel a lot calmer. I know I've gotten into those places before where I'm just like zen almost, you know, I'm like just so calm, you know, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't even know who
Yeah.
I am. And then I get into places like recently where I'm
Yeah.
like, on the other side of it. And so I think that's just kind of a roller
Yeah.
coaster, but how can we make it so that
Yeah.
it's not that big of a roller coaster? It's more like this, you know, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I tell my clients ride the kiddie roller coaster like at the fair. Don't ride like the vortex at, you know, Great America or Six Flags or whatever. Like stay away from those. But dude, I think that's huge. That's a huge key piece to this is the honesty with self thing because we are our own biggest critics and we have to understand that. And the more we worry about what if scenarios or hypotheticals in the future, we add a ton of anxiety on ourselves, and then the more we try to fix or delay or dwell and sulk on whatever happened good or bad in the past causes a certain level of stress as well. And so having those super honest conversations and being like, okay, what are my controllables, what can I focus on here and now, and just start with that, and that's where the action should be focused on and taken. Any energy outside of that, and now I'm not saying don't project and make goals and, you know, focus on what you want to do in the future. That's great. And I'm not saying don't look back and learn from the past, but just use those as references. Don't let them be end all be alls, because the second you take your energy and start dumping it into hypothetical what if scenarios, looking too far in the future and then going, damn, I wish this didn't happen in the past, here go our levels of stress and anxiety as they rise. And before we know it, we're like, holy shit, how did we even get here? Well, we're so focused on, I want this, or I hope this goes this way. And damn, I wish that would have happened in the, you know, last week, but I guess it sucks and I guess I'll deal with it. When anytime we find ourselves in those zones, it's always great to have those honest conversations. And I think one of the easiest ways for me that I've found to do this when you're in those states and you don't really realize it is like, how would I coach myself? Like how it's always easy for me to coach somebody else because I'm not in their shoes. I can empathize with them. I can understand where they're coming from, but I'm not currently feeling the feelings that they're feeling. So it's very easy for me to look from an outside perspective and like coach somebody. But when you're feeling those things and you're trying to have a clear mind and get yourself out of it, that's where the challenge comes into play. So what's helped me is like, well, Matt, what if you were to coach Matt? And it all of a sudden removes myself from feeling anything. It's not saying, I'm not saying don't feel those the feelings, but all of a sudden I can detach from it, and I can look at it for face value as if I was coaching somebody else. And then immediately I start to get some clarity around it and go, oh, you're not being honest with yourself. You're not putting in as much work as you think you are, or you're not doing as many reps as you visualize that you're doing or you think you're doing. So therefore you feel like you're deserving or you know, of this beneficial reward or outcome. And then when I detach myself, I go, no, you're not, dude. You're not doing half the work that's even required. And when I can look at it for like that value, I'm like, oh, I can deal with that at the end of the day. I could settle with that because I know I'm not doing the work. I'm not putting the work in. But when I have these blinders on and I'm bullshitting myself and I'm going, yeah, but I feel like I am doing the work. It's the same thing with the clients, right? Like I feel like I am doing everything. I'm doing my workouts, and I send them over this what I call a fit with Matt baseline leveling from a nutrition standpoint. It asks you a series of few questions. Are you accurately weighing and measuring all your food? Are you taking into consideration any nibbles, bites, snacks, or anything eating in between your meals? Are you taking into consideration and measuring accurately condiments and ketchup and barbecue sauce and all these things? Are you taking into consideration alcohol and drinking any calories? And immediately people go, oh yeah, I'm not paying attention to those things. I'm not doing as good as I thought I was. I'm not adhering as well as I thought. There's levels to this. And once you understand there's levels and you can have that real conversation with yourself, you'll feel stress come off your shoulders because you're going like, oh yeah, the only reason the stress is there is because I'm BSing myself, trying to encourage myself because I care, which is cool, but I'm giving myself more credit than what's due. And therefore, by doing that, I'm expecting some outcome that I'm not deserving of quite yet. And so now there creates this conflict, and it's like there's this level of stress that I experience when it can all be alleviated if I have the ability to coach myself and just be like, dude, I just got to be honest with myself. Am I doing the work or not? Am I doing it at the level that is required to yield the specific outcome? And if the answer is no, then you can't be upset. Like you're like, dude, there's work that needs to be done here. You know what I mean? Like, quit BSing yourself. But for whatever reason, we have a tough time with that, and it's because we attach emotionally. We're in it, right? We're in the shoes, so it's very hard to see. And sometimes we all have blinders on, and so it's easy to look at somebody else's scenario that you don't have feelings to or attached emotionally. And if you're a coach, like that's where you can really shine is go, but you also have the ability to empathize with them too. Cause you're like, hey, I've been there before. I see where you're at now. And you got your blinders on. This is what you're doing. And this is what you need to be doing, right? This is what you're doing really well. And this is where I think you need to move the needle in the right direction a little bit more over here. And so I'm not sure if you've experienced that, but yeah, man, that's what's been super helpful for me is like, if I have the ability to detach and like be super honest with myself, that's why I love that you brought up the honesty thing. Cause it's really such a big key when people have the ability to do that.
Fuck, man. That's really, really good. That last 5 minutes there was money. I think like giving advice to other people is always so much easier than giving advice to yourself. So like you said, pulling yourself out of your own shoes and looking at yourself as if you're a client or you're another person gives the clarity, right? And so, I mean, I can't think of any better way to end it on that. But that was money. Guys, go listen to that last 5 minutes, if nothing else, again, because that's a huge, huge key in being able to just see things a lot more clearly. Because sometimes we're clouded by our bullshit, right? It's like you're kind of clouded by our own bullshit, and then once we're able to get that out of the way, it just makes everything so much easier. And so, again, guys, thank you so much for taking some time out of your week, your day to watch and listen to this. And if you enjoyed it, make sure you just share it with somebody that you know, that you love, that you hope could benefit from it. And we appreciate you. We hope you have a good rest of the day, a good rest of the week, and we'll be talking to you soon.